From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. All right, we are joined by Will Harris. Will Harris is a fourth-generation farmer and owner of White Oak Pastures. He wrote a book that's in our bookstore called A Bold Return to Giving a Damn. I know, Will, you have a lot of fun stories about how writing that book went, but let's start off with saying, thanks for coming, and we appreciate you joining us at EcoAg again this year.
Well, thank you for having me on today. Thank you for doing the things you're doing with Acres, and I'm looking forward to it.
What's the main thing that you guys are battling on the farm right now?
We're doing some construction projects right now that are always take their toll. We just built a big freezer unit for our meat plant. When I built this business, it was grocery and it was all fresh meat. And that has evolved into more online sales, which is frozen product. We just didn't have the freezer space to handle that. We've just spent what for us is a lot of money putting in a big freezer, and that's we're loading it up now. So that's going on. We're about to do another project, and that is to convert our poultry plant, USDA inspected poultry plant, so that we can slaughter pigs, sheep, and goats in it. We're over capacity in our red meat plant, under capacity in our poultry plant. So the answer for us is going to be to rework the plant, remodel the plant, so we can slaughter some meat animals in there, not cattle, but pigs, sheep, and goats. And the third thing that we're about to start on is a large solar voltaic array to power all of our plants and order fulfillment, all of our manufacturing side, and that's a big deal for us. So we don't usually do that many projects at one time, but we are now.
What was it like getting into these different businesses? What was the first side? I know you guys had more of an industrial, conventional cattle operation, and you moved it into a regenerative farm. But what was the first thing that you diversified as far as a business perspective?
Well, I think the first thing we did is move away from the industrial model. We had always had a cattle feedlot, and we moved away from that. We moved into, and I started having animals slaughtered at outside slaughter plants. And that was my preference. I did not want to be in the cattle slaughter business, but I couldn't get enough done to make it work, make the business work cash flow positive. So we built our slaughter plant in the early 2000s. And then it seems like we've been building ever since.
What type of markets opened up with you bringing that slaughter facility in-house?
We sold Publix supermarket and Whole Foods market the first pound of American grass-fed beef. They marketed as American grass-fed beef. And our timing was so fortunate, not smart, not skilled, fortunate. We made those changes based on some personal preferences that we had, and probably would have gone broke. But the fact that grass-fed beef became increasingly an issue back in the late 90s, early 2000s, enabled us to make a business out of it.
What's it like dealing with these big suppliers like that? What type of business meetings did you get thrown into, and where did you get the, I guess, business acumen to navigate those types of meetings?
Yeah, I don't know that I had much business acumen. I had grass-fed beef, and nobody else did. We I used to have to go to Austin, Texas once a quarter when I was doing business with Whole Foods. I don't do business with Whole Foods Market anymore, but when I did, I went out there once a quarter, and I never enjoyed it, but I went. Uh, Publix has been they've been very good to us. They're my oldest customer. I've been doing business with them over 20 years. I've shipped them beef every single week for 20 years, over 20 years.
How important is it to not stop shipping the meat? So if you had ever gotten a hold of Publix and say, sorry, we don't have inventory this week or this month, what do you think would have happened to that?
Well, there's a mutual dependence upon each other. I mean, I need to slaughter cattle 5 days a week, every week. And thankfully, they need beef to sell 7 days a week, every week. And it takes something pretty remarkable to disrupt that system. Throughout the pandemic, we continued to do business with them through hurricanes and other disasters. We've done business with them. We did what we were supposed to do, and they did what they were supposed to do. And it's been a really good relationship.
Yeah. What got you is what made you start wanting to change the practices and got you into more grass finished cattle?
I was. This is not a very flattering story to tell, but I was kind of an overuser of the tools of the industrial model. You know, if it if the directions said on the pharmaceutical said give them 2 cc's per hundred, I probably started at 3 and went to 4 cc's per hundred because that's just what I did. If the label instructions on the pesticide said put a pint to the acre, I probably put a quart to the acre, which is just what I did. And I thought if a little would do little good, more would do more good, and that's the way I ran the business. And I think because I did, it allowed me or forced me to see the unintended consequences of these production tools that I was using. So I simply didn't like it anymore. So I started moving away from
What were some of the let's go like animal welfare type things? What's some of the first things you started noticing?
it. I think from a welfare perspective, we'll just take that route. We can take a lot of different routes, but from a welfare perspective, uh, in my mind, when I was an industrial cattleman, I felt like if I gave the animals all the food they wanted, all the water they wanted, kept them in a comfortable temperature range, and didn't intentionally inflict pain and suffering on them, that was I was good to go on the animal welfare side. The box was checked, and I realized that's probably not right. That animals, cattle need to roam and graze. And when I shut them up in a feedlot and would put several hundred in a small area, they had all they wanted to eat and drink, but they didn't have there was no roaming and grazing. They were either in dust or mud, depending on what the weather was. So, chickens the same way. Chickens, in a battery cage or a chicken house, they're meant to scratch and peck, and they can't do that anymore. And hogs meant to root and wallow. You put them on a cement slab, they can't do that anymore. So, I think the animal welfare probably was the first part of it. There's some health issues that I realized got better when I started managing them differently.
Did you see like cattle start breeding back at a better rate or avoiding say pneumonia or what things did you see happen to them that
From a disease perspective, I hadn't treated a cow for a disease in a long time. We probably got 3 or 4 thousand head here on the farm at on any given day. And we just don't have sick cattle. We may have a birth accident. We may have a calf come backwards or something like that. But as far as just foot rot, pneumonia, the things I used to routinely have and treat for, you just don't see it much anymore. If I do, I probably don't treat it, and it goes away. It's not that bad. It's just so I'm very happy with that side of it.
when did you start moving the cattle more?
When I early on, it took a while to build up to it, but today this farm that I'm on now is 3,200 acres. It's 150 something paddocks, and we move the animals every day to a new paddock, and I like that a lot. But before I changed my mind, I started changing my mind in the mid 90s. We just had a much smaller number of paddocks and a much greater number of herds. Not necessarily cows in the herd, but just a lot of little herds. And those herds lived in paddocks pretty much. Wasn't too much movement going on, and I thought that was fine. And when I changed my mind and put all the animals together, pretty much, and then started chopping up these big paddocks into smaller paddocks, it allowed me to put the animals on a little paddock at a high stocking rate, leave them for 24 hours, and move to another paddock, and another paddock, and another paddock. And it'll be 60 days or so before they get back to the first paddock they were on. And in that 60 days, the grass will have time to recover. And it's just a beautiful thing. That gas, that those plants in that pasture are like a carbon pump. You know, they photosynthesize. The cows eat it. They photosynthesizes. It brings in carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases, and makes all this forage above the ground. Maybe get 2 feet deep, maybe more. And if it's 2 feet above the ground, there's 2 feet of roots under the ground. All of that material is carbon that is breathed in from the atmosphere. And we put the animals in, the cattle or hogs, sheep or goat, whatever it is. We're talking about cattle now. For one day, they'll eat it down. I've grazed really hard, and then we move them out. And all that manure goes on the ground, and there are dung beetles and other insects working it into the soil. A lot of earthworms out there. And the roots slough off a little bit, and that carbon is sequestered below the ground. Then it's 60 days. It recovers, and we do it again. It's like it's a carbon pump.
Yeah. What do you? How do you bank different paddocks, say for a drought, or if say a paddock didn't recover the way you wanted to? How do you plan for
Uh,
that?
I've got grazing, hay baling arrangements on two fairly large wastewater farms. So I make a lot of hay, and I make it, and I got a pretty low cost in my hay, and it's pretty good hay. And what I do is I feed my way through these little problems. Now, I realize a lot of people have a lot of different ways of doing it. And most people, I stock my pastures at a rate, a stocking rate that the pastures will bear in a normal meteorological
Yeah.
circumstance. And then because I've got a fairly cheap hay source, if I have adversity in the weather, we'll feed our way through it. I'll put the cows on one paddock, feed them hay till things recover, then we'll go again. That's not necessarily the way everybody ought to do it. It's just what I've evolved into.
Yeah. What do you do for? Are you guys concerned about shade, or do you feel like your cattle are adapt to it? Just, I'm sure one of your biggest concerns is heat in the summer in Georgia.
I'm
How
very
do you
concerned.
how do you how do you battle the heat? And I'm sure you don't have shade in every paddock.
I pretty much do. We've
Oh, that's
been
awesome.
some don't have as much as I wanted to have, but I pretty much got shade in every paddock. And we strategically laid out our paddock system so they would have water and shade in every paddock, and hopefully some redundant water. I like having well water, and I like having pond water. And if the power goes out, well goes dry, pump tails up, we'll water out the pond. If it doesn't, we'll pump water for them. And then trees, I don't have enough trees. We plant trees. We plant a lot of trees here, Planting trees is very expensive. No, no, planting trees is not expensive. Protecting the trees from the cattle is
Yeah.
expensive when they're little. But we plant a lot of trees, plant trees every year, and we'll continue to do so.
What tree species are you guys planting the most of right now?
Mostly I plant white oaks and green ash. This past year, I planted some paulownia trees, which I'm not real crazy about. They're fast growing, short lived Australian tree, but I needed shade quickly, so I planted them, and I like them. I don't want to be dependent upon them, but I'm gonna plant some along.
And then when you zoom out, I know you have a lot of employees and a lot of people working for you, but specifically, how many people do you have managing the cattle herd, and what is kind of the easy way of saying your core principles or management rules that you give those guys?
Every species has a manager, and every building, every operation here has a manager. You asked about cattle specifically. We've got one cattle manager. He's been with me a long time. In the summertime, he sometimes only has one employee working for him. In the wintertime, when we're feeding hay, he'll have three or maybe even four people working for him. I didn't tell you this, but all of our pastures are in warm season perennial grasses, which is what we do well in the coastal plain of Georgia. But we overseed every acre every year in October with a cool season mix of annuals. And we're doing that right now. We do our best to do that during the month of October. That's kind of the sweet spot for us for getting that cool season annual in that perennial uh, warm season perennial base.
Sorry, lost you there a second. How are you establishing the cool season annuals? Are you drilling it in, broadcasting, letting the cattle trample it in? How are you guys establishing it?
I used to spread it and broadcast it and let them put it in, but that's not very seed efficient. And I don't have much good equipment, but I do have a really good no-till grain drill. I got a 20-foot John Deere 5090 grain drill that's aggressive, and it'll cut through the turf and put it down there. And we do that seeding in October intentionally. October and May are our two driest months, and so the warm season perennial is not really competing with it much because it's not growing. It's just sitting there because it's dry. And B, that the ground's hard, and that disc will open it up so I can get those seed to soil contact. And I like to put the cattle herd in it after I plant it, and immediately after I plant it, and let them help that seed to soil contact with those cloven hooves pushing it in.
What are the species of warm season perennials that you try to get established, or are you just pretty much using the soil bank?
No, no, I plant. When I acquire a new piece of land, I plant it in Bahia grass. It's a non-native. It's from South America, but it's been here. My dad planted Bahia grass right after World War II. It's been here for a long time, and it works well for us, and it's cheap. And I would like to plant old foundation native grasses, but it's very expensive, and I'm in a rush. I got to go. I think that would be better. What I do is quicker and cheaper, so and I got to do
Yeah.
that. Then we oversee, and that's what I plant. That's not all the side there. The other species come. The other species would be Dallas grass, Johnson grass, crabgrass, sadly smut grass, sadly, and other things come.
Yeah. What made you start getting into multi species? What was the first secondary species that you brought on the farm?
I was a monocultural cattleman, didn't have anything but cattle, didn't know about anything but cattle, didn't want anything but cattle. When I when I started rotating the cattle through the pastures the way we do now, there's a lot of stuff in my pasture, a lot of plants in my pasture that my cattle just wouldn't eat or preferentially would try not to eat. And so I got sheep, and then that helped a little bit. Then later I got goats, and that helped a little more. And then later I got hogs, and then we added poultry. And I don't know that we'll add any more species. We might. I don't feel the need to do it. But having multi-species of animals grazing multi-species of plants is working very well for us now.
How do you move the cattle? I guess, how do you manage the grazing operation with the multi-species? When do sheep hit a certain paddock versus when cattle hit it?
That's very subjective. I used to try to follow cows, followed by sheep, followed by goats, followed by poultry, and that's just too much. It doesn't work for me. We can't manage that. I'm not saying it's bad, but I couldn't seem to keep it managed. So now the cattle, which is our primary operation, is what we've been doing the longest. We have an order there, and we know exactly where they're going. They go from paddock to paddock to paddock in pretty much the same route, around and around the farm, 60, 80 days to make the trip. Uh, the the sheep have recently been grazing solar voltaic arrays, and that's profitable for us. So we had to take our sheep out of this rotation because I needed them at the solar voltaic arrays because they pay me to graze that. And that's working well for us. That's a great business. I urge people to look into that. Goats are the goats. We use them medicinally. We look for where we need goats. We've got a species, some plant species that we're not too crazy about. That's taking an area. We'll put the goats in there and let them hammer it for us. And hogs, we use them sort of for remediation. When we wean pigs, we put them in a set, a temporary fencing in the middle of a paddock with water, and that's where we feed them. And then when they get used to the electric wire, we'll wagon wheel off that so that we can give a little bit of impact to a lot of pastures, but not too much impact on any pastures. Hogs will be very damaging if you let them.
What are you grazing your perennial pastures, the same ones that the cattle graze with those hogs? And what have you noticed after integrating the hogs into those pastures?
We are grazing the same pastures that we graze the cattle on. And the hogs, if you get the impact right, it benefits the pasture. It loosens it up. Hog manure, urine, it's good for it. If you let them stay too long, it's damaging. And too long is very subjective. It depends on how much rain you get and what time of year it is, how many hogs you got, how big a space they got. It takes a lot of management on that side. We've got a young woman that manages our hogs. It does a fantastic job.
Yeah, I finally ran some hogs in perennial waterways that nothing's ever been done to them except grazing. I've only ran them before on cover crop fields and in the woods, and I was really happy with the impact they had with that taller, mature grass. I mean, they really leveled it down, similar to what you'd want to see cattle as far as their impact. And I think it. Do you put rings in their noses or anything to avoid the rooting, or you think that impact is pretty universal? Just need to move them once the paddock gets to that certain point.
I do not use rings. I think that's part of the animal welfare. Those hogs want to root, and I think that the land is probably better off if the hogs are allowed to root if you don't overdo it. I mean, it requires management.
Yeah, yeah, quite a bit of management. So, what has it been like? I mean, do you want to give a quick overview of all the different business operations that are built off the back of your farming operation?
Well, it's not a big business, but it's a complex business. We have land, we have different species of food animals on the land that we try to use in a manner that's good for the animals and benefits the land. Then we have slaughter capacity to turn those animals into a marketable commodity, beef and pork and lamb, poultry. Then we've got the order fulfillment, where we still ship some wholesale grocery and food service, but it's less and less. But we ship that. We also have an order fulfillment center where we ship to online orders that we take. We do that order fulfillment here on the farm. We've got we have moved a lot of our operation into the town of Bluffton. That's where I'm sitting right now. Bluffton happens to be right, little town of Bluffton, 120 people in town. It's right in the middle of the farm. And we've got a restaurant and a general store and lodging. We've built cabins. People come here and stay. We enjoy that. We've got a little operation in town that for value addition, we take in the hides. We make rawhide pet shoes. We have the leather tanned. We're not good at tanning leather. We have that done, but then we make different things. They make different things, purses and different things like that. We have the egg business, have an egg washing area machine down there in a building. We've got a garden. The garden is not profitable for us, but we enjoy it. But we've got about a 4-acre garden, and we grow vegetables that we sell in the store and the restaurant. And we've got a value addition business where they take those vegetables and make canned goods. They run to tallow and lard and those kind of things. We got bees. Got to get them in the beehives. We got where we put the honey up. There's a lot of moving parts here, and I really enjoy that. And we've got some really good people helping to run it. I used to run this business very, very autonomously. I was the only decision maker. And of course, today that is not the case. We've got, I guess we got 6 of us who I call directors, 7 maybe, who manage 21 managers who manage the other 150 or so employees. So there's a lot more structure than there used to be when I was just cowboy.
What was the first thing that you dipped your toes in that you realized like that added a lot of profit to our bottom line as far as the different enterprises?
With the slaughter, it's
Yeah.
the least enjoyable business that we're in, and it's the one that requires the most management. But it brought profitability to us more so than anything else we've done. And I
What's it
really
like?
don't necessarily recommend people build farmers build a slaughter plant. It's a lot better if you can work with others to do it. We own ours, but I don't necessarily enjoy owning it. It's just what I do.
Hi there. Just wanted to interrupt this episode to make sure that you have heard about our Acres 2024 Eco Egg Conference. This year's event will be held in Madison, Wisconsin from December 2nd through December 5th. I think we have put together one of the best lineups for a conference in the regenerative and organic agriculture space. Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, and their team from Understanding Ag, along with Joel Salatin, John Kemp, Gary Zimmer, Mark Shepard, Dr. Nasha Winters, Megan Neubauer, Matt Powers, Nigel Palmer, Will Harris, Jeff Poppin, Aaron Silva, Austin Unruh, Andre Liu, Jay Fuhrer, Steve Diver, and many more. So if you're interested, feel free to give us a call at 970-392-4464 or email us at support@acresusa.com. You can also register online at acresusa.com/eco-ag. What's the hardest part about it, the regulations or keeping employees?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, regulations is the hardest part. Although I would say that keeping employees in the slaughter plant are harder than any other aspect of our business.
What would you like to see as far as regulations? What's your perspective on the regulations? Is there are they too overreaching? Is there an avenue that you could see in the future where if you lighten up regulations, farmers would have a better opportunity to create some of these things?
Well, this is not going to be a very popular opinion. I'm going to give you, but I'll tell you what I know is, I have a USDA inspected red meat slaughter plant and a USDA inspected poultry slaughter plant and an egg washing business and a restaurant. And we're highly regulated. And all these regulations that we have to comply with cost us a lot of money, and they tick me off. I mean, it's frustrating and aggravating. But and I don't necessarily think it's fair. But but every one of those regulations is on the books because somebody somewhere did something stupid or illegal or wrong, and people got hurt from it. So it is what it is because I mean, when I get out on the road, I want to drive 80 miles an hour, but I can't because somebody get killed if we all drive 80 miles an hour. So as bad as I hate these regulations, and as much as I think some of them are I don't like them. They're there for a reason, and those reasons, people are people, and if you allow them to, they'll be slaughtering chickens on the tailgate of the truck with no ice, and
Yeah.
that's not good.
Is there any of those regulations that you think could be lightened up that are overkill, or you think they all kind of fit into that?
I mean, yeah, well, I mean, they're all different shades of gray. We could take every regulation and clip it apart, but the fact is, those regulations are in place for a reason, and I don't like them. They do make me mad, but if one of my family died, that'd make me madder.
Yeah. Was there ever a business enterprise that you started up and realized that it wasn't profitable enough and you shut it down, or are you just batting 1,000?
No, no, heck no. I've lost. We lose money in our garden every year. We choose to keep doing it, but we lose money at it because we want vegetables to eat. My poultry business has been losing money. I made probably the worst mistake I ever made business wise is building too big a poultry business and expecting it to work 52 weeks a year. It didn't work for us. We lost a lot of money. I told you we're remodeling our poultry plant now. We're going to stay in the poultry business but on a smaller scale, and it won't be fresh product. When the weather's right, we'll raise poultry. And when weather's not right, we won't have poultry. And when it's right, we'll make them produce it and freeze it and sell it all year.
You think that's mainly you? Do you think the appetite for the value added product of how you're raising chicken isn't quite there compared to other beef and pork?
That's not the way I would say it. The fact is, uh, my beef probably cost 20% more than industrial beef. We could argue that, but it's just about that 20 or 30 or 15 or something. My pork's a little more than that, a little more different than that, a little higher. But my poultry is 200 or 300% what industrial poultry is. When we industrialized the poultry production business, we took incredible cost out of production. I mean, it was very unnatural, very inhumane, and I can go on and on about what's wrong with it, but we took incredible cost out of it. I tell the story. After I built my poultry plant, spent over $1 million building that poultry plant, and it wasn't working. And I was asked to speak at an event in Boulder, Colorado, and they had me stay at the I think it's called Boulderama, something like that hotel, which is an old 1800s hotel, nice place, historic. And I was eating supper that night. You call it dinner. I was eating supper that night, and I was looking at on the wall, and there was a framed menu from like 1890 or something, way back, and it said beef dinner 89 cents, pork dinner 99 cents, chicken dinner $1.39. And that just made it crystal clear to me that I had made a mistake because we agriculture took so much cost out of production of poultry when we industrialized it. It's just hard for consumers to justify paying it. Some will, but it's hard to sell a lot of it.
Yeah. How has all of this changed your small community? Because I think we look at that. You go across the landscape of the U.S. and you see rural communities, drying up or dying or becoming kind of ghost towns. Was Bluffton similar to that? And what has all of these different businesses done to just the economic benefit of the community of Bluffton?
That's been one of the greatest surprises of my life and most pleasant of the surprises of my life. The Bluffton, Georgia, the town I'm sitting in the middle of right now, is 130 or so people, I think. And it was essentially a ghost town, and it'd been drying up all my life. I was born in 1954, and I think it started drying up after World War II, and it was just atrophying and atrophying, and none of us thought there was any help for that. I certainly didn't. And nothing I did was intended to economically benefit Bluffton. I was trying to economically benefit my family, my employees. But and Bluffton is very agricultural. Never had a railroad, never had a plant, never had a factory, never just a purely farm town. No railroad, nothing. When and there was no one living in Bluffton except old people and poor people, and it was not it would have gone out of business. But when we started changing the way we farm, in my case, I went from having 3 or 4 minimum wage employees to having 170 employees and make well above the county average. And my payroll is $100,000 a week, or $5 million a year. And we brought all these people in here to do the things we needed doing, not to benefit Bluffton because I needed stuff done. And they needed a place to eat and sleep and play and drink, and we provided it. And the unintended consequence was it turned into a nice little town. Bluffton is a very nice little town, and I'm very proud of it. And in fact, it's one of the three things I'm most grateful for. And I didn't intend to. It was not intentional on my part. It's just you pour $100,000 a week into a little impoverished community, and it becomes something other than a little impoverished community.
What are the people that you grew up with, the locals? What do they think about what you've done? I'm sure there's some that aren't happy, but
Yeah, there's some that are not happy. Yeah, let's just leave it at that. There's some that are not happy.
well, I think that's always. I mean, it's always kind of a thing with agricultural communities, unfortunately, where I could see someone like you succeeding and doing all of those things, and there being a lot of negative thoughts towards you. How have you dealt with that? Because it's always most difficult, I think, to get backlash from the community that you grew up with, and the people that you're around every day.
Well, I gotta say that I'm really blessed in that I don't care much what people think, and I really it doesn't bother me much, or excuse me, it doesn't bother me at all. It's fine. I do what I do with what I believe is good intentions, and people can perceive it in every way they want to, and I'll explain it to them if they want, if they'll let me. But I don't try to control what they believe.
Yeah. Um, what do you think about the current cattle market? I want to talk. We'll circle back to some optimistic things, but um, obviously cattle prices have skyrocketed over the last couple of years. Uh, I don't think grass-fed beef prices have followed the same trajectory. I see a lot of folks who do really good operations, grass-fed operations, who are just selling their stockers back to conventional markets because they're out ahead on that. Um, how do you see this playing out over the next few years?
Yeah, you're exactly right in what you said. Your analysis is exactly the same as mine. And and then now you asked me what I think, and this is very much just what I think. I mean, I have no, I don't know any more than my answer, but the for all my life and before my life, the cattle have been cyclical. That 10 or so year high population buildup, decline, and I'm not sure that that's the way that's going to be going forward. I think that the cattle herd is smaller than it's been since 1950 something. But we still got plenty of beef. I mean, I don't know anybody that can't buy beef. It's high, but you can buy it. And I think it's because we're importing a lot more beef than we think we are. I think we're importing a lot more beef than we used to. And I think we'll continue to import a lot of beef. And I don't know that I don't know if that's good or bad. I think it's the way it is. And I think it's going to impact what we do. I think that um, increasingly you may see the cow population shrink. Maybe not year to year, but just in general. I think that the four big beef companies that feed us 85 or more percent of the beef we eat will be increasingly reliant upon imports. I think that I don't, I know that fake meat, alternative meat, what do you call it, is kind of taking some licks now, but I don't think that's going to go away. I think that they'll figure out how to do it better and better. And I think there'll be a segregation between those who are willing to eat synthetic meat and those who are not. I think we're seeing I'm going to see a lot of change in the meat business in general, beef in particular, that we've never seen before. And I tend to be excessively optimistic, but I think it's going to be okay for me. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that as long as we maintain our integrity and openness and letting people come and look and see what we do and do the right things, I think we'll sell plenty of product. One benefit that we've got is this business is bigger than I ever intended for it to be, and if it doesn't grow any more ever, that's fine. And if it shrunk a little bit, it'd be fine. We as a family, we made the decision that we don't want to hire a CEO and have a big old company. This business is about as big as we're capable of running, and we don't want to hire somebody to come in and run it and grow it for us. So we
What do you? I could definitely see the advantages of having an established cow calf herd, and you're not pushed to buy the big stockers. I think the big prices that right now with stockers, but the thing that concerns me is the average cow calf producer in the country is like 70 years old. Well, I know personally a few of those guys that have had these high prices last couple of years, sold their herd, and they're never coming back, most likely. Um, that's the only part that I get concerned about is who's going to replace all these farmers, and it doesn't seem like there's any real good strategy because I don't think there's a bunch of people in my generation going to come up and pick up the slack either.
well, I think you're right. And the fact is, while you and I may hate to see these old timers go out of business. By the way, I'm 70. I'm
But
one of them.
I mean, they do it by choice. I mean, they happily sold they said we'll never see prices like this again, and they took their check, and I don't think they're complaining about not having cattle chores anymore.
And they probably won't go back in the business, and there's a high likelihood that nobody will replace them on a lot of those farms. It'll be not recreational property or developed property or whatever else. And you and I may not like that, uh, but that's probably where we are.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
you
think it
know,
gives a lot of opportunity to the to people who want to hustle and they don't necessarily need to own the land. They can go get a hold of some of these properties that, people have not abandoned but quit raising cattle on, and there's some infrastructure there that can be used still.
if I
Um,
were a young man, or if I didn't have so much going on, I think I'd start a business as sort of a matchmaker between young people that were motivated to farm but don't have land, and retiring people that own land that they want to see stay in agriculture and but can't farm it anymore. I think there's a business to be made in being the matchmaker between those two overtly. I mean, you need to go see the land and know what you're talking about. You need to know the people and know what you're talking about, and put those deals together. And
what would be the business profit? Would you control? Would you want to control the product that comes off of it, or have a market for it and leverage that? Or
I think that need to be a margin in the compensation to the landowner. That
yeah,
but I
a
mean,
broker
I
of
hadn't
sorts.
I hadn't studied it. I hadn't, well, I'm not going to do it. But I wish somebody would.
Yeah, well, there is some organizations doing similar things. I've definitely looked into it. Um, what do you? I know you guys have worked with some policy stuff. And I know there was an important policy change with how imported beef was going to be labeled, especially in the grass-fed markets. Do you want to explain that a little bit, or what's going to change if you see it changing, and how long, essentially our markets are going to lag behind before we see the benefits of it?
Yeah, that has really had a great impact on my business and the business of others that do what I do for a living. When I started selling grass-fed beef, product of the USA, the definition product of the USA meant born, raised, and processed in the 50 states. In 2015 or 16, I think, they changed that rule so that product of the USA meant value was added in this country. So the animal could be born, raised, and slaughtered in Uruguay, Australia, New Zealand, 26 other countries, I think. And label the beef could be product of the USA because value was added in this country. And that was just, I mean, there's anybody that has that looks into it would see that that was just a really bad policy decision made purely to open the door for importers, and it hurt grass-fed beef producers, including us. We stayed in business, but it hurt us.
So I
They
wonder, because a lot of people always talk about 2014 being the last time that we had prices similar to this. So there was obviously a uh, a, a demand with our beef market. We didn't have enough beef in supply. Do you think it was in relation to that issue where that policy came through?
I would think so. I don't know
Yeah.
what the percentage correlation would be, but I would think that would be impactful of that. But they surprisingly they changed the rule, and they it doesn't have to beef will in the future not have to be labeled product of Uruguay or whatever, but they can't say product of the USA if it came from these other countries. That's the good news. The bad news is they gave the importers until December 31st of 2025 to implement that. So we got another year and whatever months, 2 months of uh, mislabeling, legal mislabeling to deal with. But I am delighted that they've changed it, and I hope that something doesn't happen to make it change back.
Yeah, I think that's the most optimistic. Because would you say the grass-fed markets were over more impacted by that law than conventional, or both were pretty impacted by it?
I think both were pretty well
Yeah,
impacted by it. I would think grass fed may have been more impacted, but I can't I couldn't argue that.
yeah. Well, what optimistic viewpoint do you have over the next 10, 20 years when it comes to regenerative practices? Are we just spinning our wheels here? Are we moving in the right direction? What can people what's a good optimistic viewpoint that you have where we're moving in the right direction?
I think that the most optimistic uh, position I can take is the fact that I think there's more consumer acknowledgement of industrially produced versus uh, uh, grass fed. The things we do, more artisan produced. I think there's more and more consumer acknowledgement of it, acceptance of it, and I think that's real good. I think that the downside is that industrial food, big food, just does such a brilliant job greenwashing industrially produced product. So even enlightened, smart, thorough consumers can still be fooled and tricked. But I think there's the industrial food producers are having to work harder to trick them. And I think that our business, I sell all the product I want to sell right now. I don't want to sell any more product. We're not trying to to increase our sales. We're doing this work I told you about, and that's going to change some little things, but our volume is fine. The problem is that we're selling it in 48 states, and I don't want to sell it in 48 states. It I appreciate every order we get on our order fulfillment center. I'm sorry. I appreciate every order we get in our order fulfillment center. And we ship to California and Arizona and Oregon and places like that, Maine. But that's not where I want to sell. I feel bad when I ship product to those distant destinations because I feel like I'm depriving some other producer of the opportunity to sell something local. I ship it. I need the business, but I really want to sell the amount of product I sell now far more locally. I want to sell in Georgia, Florida, Alabama, whatever it takes. So, my hope is that there will be increasing numbers of consumers that want to buy food that's raised in a regenerative manner, humane manner, local as they can manner, and that other farmers will feel that need in their geography, and I'll feel the need in this geography.
Well, whenever you get orders from Wisconsin, you want to push them my way, I'll make sure to take care of them.
We do
If you're just offering it up.
we do get orders from Wisconsin and other states. I think we ship to 48 states,
Yeah.
and we ship a lot of stuff to Texas and New York and those big states. And I mean, I'm grateful for those people's business. Make no mistake. I just wish it wasn't the way it is. I need to sell the amount of stuff I sell. If
Yeah.
our business is profitable, but our return on investment is not good. When I sit down with my friends who are CPAs and MBAs and CFOs and what all those letters are, and tell them the truth about what our numbers are, they think I'm crazy for having this much invested on that lower return.
Yeah.
And and I'm I wish it was more, but I'm okay with it. But we can't miss any business. We got to sell the amount of stuff we're selling. That's my point. But I'd rather sell it locally.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else? Where should people go to find more out about you? Anything else that you're working on right now? You working on a second book yet?
There won't be a second book. I promise
Yeah.
you that. I just about didn't get the first one wrote. There won't be another one. We got Instagram and Facebook and the website and all that. It's White Oak Pastures or whiteoakpastures.com. And we got good people that work on the content of all that stuff, and they do a good job, and I'm grateful to them, and I appreciate them doing it, and I appreciate folks that are interested in looking at it and reading it.
At White Oak Pastures.
whiteoakpastures.com.
All right. All right. Well, we're looking forward to having you out in December, and you can find Will at our conference December 1st through the 5th. So
I'm,
looking forward to
I'm
meeting you
looking
again in person.
I'm looking forward to being there with y'all. Thank you for having me, and thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. And we're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experiences.